Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another film theory reaction. And this one is the scariest YouTube channel just got darker. So yeah, looking at the thumbnail here, I recognize this guy, the weird triangular shaped head guy. This was like from some form of like analog horror channel. Though I can't for the life of me remember what it was actually called. Because, you know, film theory has covered a lot of those over the years, so it's kind of hard to remember specifics. Though, I mean, from all the ones I do remember seeing, or at least the bits and pieces I should say, honestly, like, the people that, you know, well, at least the ones that do get popular, they can be, like, so good and, like, so well made. Honestly, I'm kind of excited to be reintroduced to this one, because I remember this one being, like, really weird, like really weird. Honestly, yeah, I don't have anything else to say, so let's actually get this thing started then. So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my game theory reaction. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel. Because with me finally hitting 6,000 subscribers earlier this month, and honestly, to, you know, kind of try to see how close to 7,000 subscribers I can get before Christmas. But yeah, of course, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Boisvert is hands down the creepiest series we've ever covered on Film Theory. Between its skin-crawling animation, the terrifying subject matter it covers, and the horror it explores without any jump scares, Boisvert will stick with you. And believe it or not, but this one has a happy ending. Hello, internets! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's
Boisvert, okay, yeah, so that's definitely not a name I remember, so it's definitely has been a while since they've done a video on this.
trapped inside of a small room. Please help. The only way I can get out is if you'd be so kind as to hit that subscribe button. So help a brother out. So a couple of years ago, a new analog horror series hit the deepest, darkest corners of YouTube and took the internet by storm, with a lot of people calling it the scariest YouTube channel ever. This is boisvert, or boisvert as I think it's actually called, and this has to be one of the most unique projects I've ever had the privilege of taking a look at. We did a theory about it back in 2022. It was actually one of my first projects as creative director for Film Theory, where we broke down the first arc of its cryptic and creepy storyline. Yeah, believe it or not, but buried in this avant-garde animation and creepy video filters and ARG elements, there's a plotline that tells an incredibly compelling story. And though you should just go check out that old theory if you want the TLDW, Boisvert is a metaphorical story about the depression many of us were feeling during the COVID lockdowns, where those darker feelings literally manifested as monsters haunting our main character Antlers Guy. The most prominent of these was the triangle-headed room, who represented the darker thoughts Antlers Guy had after being trapped in, well, his room for so long. This eventually evolves into another dark feeling, the Complex, who bombards Antlers Guy with just torrents of despair. Eventually, with the help of his dog companion Optimism, Antlers Guy is able to confront his fear of not being loved. He's able to find a way to overcome his darkness and coexist with it to move forward, all by
God, honestly, like, thinking back to the pandemic and when everything shut down, like, I mean, honestly, thinking about it, I was not hit as hard as some people were by it, mainly because, you know, I was working at the time at a hardware store, which didn't close down, so I still went out almost every, you know, many days of the week to actually go work. And also, you know, probably the Asperger's as well. It didn't really affect me because it was just really just, you know, more of the same. But yeah, from the stuff I've heard, like, God, some people had it rough during that time.
By reaching out to others when he's in his darkest place. Boisvert was awesome. It was the perfect sort of series to make a theory about, with a unique visual style that implemented everything from hand-drawn animation to rotoscoped live-action footage to surreal collages to create its world. And the creator didn't stop there. Even when we did our last theory, there were several other videos in the series that started a new story arc. And the creator has continued to experiment with both narrative and filmmaking techniques. Seriously, later videos add in stop-motion animation, 3D renders, and action scenes with a moving camera camera more akin to a blockbuster film than a home movie. And so, since it's been a minute since this next story arc has found its conclusion, I figured it was time to return to this series with a new eye and break down this story.
Honestly, I have to wonder, where is this guy located? Because with a name like boisvert, you'd think, it's possibly, somewhere in France or something. But, like, again, I guess it also does help that you have all these filters and stuff like that. It really does make, like, the background so indistinct that you can't really use them to try to, like, get a sense of where it was filmed or anything. So it definitely feels very otherworldly.
Something that I'm going to call the Covenant arc. But it's here where I want to say that boisvert gets into some pretty heavy topics, including mental health struggles like depression, anxiety, isolation, and self-harm. If those are going to be difficult for you to watch, hear, or think about, it's totally okay if you want to sit this one out. But just like with our first theory, I promise that everything turns out okay in this one. Yeah, believe it or not, but this is a story with an uplifting message, even if it's dressed up in this dark imagery and ideas. So if you're down to explore this breakdown of the human psyche and its darkest corners, well, turn the lights off and pull the blanket over your heads, loyal theorists, as we dive into boisvert. Oh, and hey, just to mention this up front before we get too much further, I later learned that some of the characters have canonical names that we didn't use in our first theory. For example, Antlers Guy is actually named Oriole, and the character we called Optimism is also called Dogtooth by the community. So we're going to be calling the characters by those names just to keep things consistent with the rest of the fan base. There wasn't a great place to put that in the intro, so it's going here. Okay.
Honestly, I mean, again, the video was originally made multiple years ago, so yeah, things can change and update.
Okay, cool. We mentioned this in our last theory, but clinical depression isn't something that you just magically cure. It's not something that you defeat and move on with your life. It's something that you manage, that you learn to live with, but it can stay with you. There aren't a lot of stories that deal with the direct aftermath of battling that depression, but boisvert tackles that head on. We see this in the first video after the complex arc ends, Ashes.mp4, where Oriole has started beating himself up again after working on his next project. He even briefly reverts back into Room, backsliding slightly into more depressive episodes. And in the video Narrowing, Room has completely taken control again as Oriole is wrapped in barbed wire. Dialogue in this video straight up says, quote, "As hard as it may be to believe, he is still burning." This continues the burning motif from the first arc, which straight up has a video called Burning.mp4, and yet, funnily enough, even in that feeling, there is some hope. The description for Burning.mp4, one of the first videos in the series, says, quote, "I have been reduced to ash." And the description of Ashes.mp4 reads, "What comes after ash?"
Jeez, looking at, like, God, yeah. It's definitely been a long time since they did those first videos. But yeah, I mean, what comes after ash? I mean, like, that's the thing about ash is that you can't do anything with ash. Like, it doesn't burn anymore. All the combustible stuff has been taken out, and you're just left with, all the stuff that's left. After that, the only thing you have after ash is life, really, because it's actually, the ashes actually do help for making good fertilizer.
Even through that pain, there is something on the other side, even if it takes a bit to get to, which will be the big theme of this story arc coming up. The rest of Narrowing features a strange, video game-esque dialogue sequence between the Complex and the viewer, though I believe the viewer has taken the point of view of the Complex's old adversary, the optimistic Dogtooth. Why? Well, just take a look at some of the dialogue options here. They're all openly hostile towards the Complex, and
"I will bite off the entrapped limb. This has only ever been for his sake 67 days ago."
Specifically, quote, "I will bite off the entrapped limb." That's something that dogs and wolves have been known to do when trapped by hunters. But then that begs the question, why is Dogtooth having this chat with Complex, its enemy? Well, Complex explains that Oriole is no longer having his pain numbed, and despite their formal rivalry, both want to crush Oriole's pain. There are messages hidden in American Sign Language throughout this video, telling us, quote, "The question they asked him remains unanswered. He has moved past me, not beyond me," end quote. This means that despite the Complex having been defeated, it's still part of Oriole and wants to help. So the two form a sort of uneasy alliance, working together hand in hand. Tentacle and paw, whatever,
Yeah.
You get it. By the video A Love Letter, we get yet another incredible musical track as Dogtooth hunts down Room, hoping to cut the despair out of Oriole, intent on saving him by doing so. Honestly, the theme of cutting off darker parts of yourself is a recurring part in this story, since the battle features the Bible verse Matthew 5:30. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. But the Room overpowers Dogtooth, saying,
"Your ideals will cost us everything. It will not matter when we speak. It will not matter when we sing. This is the only way in which it matters."
What Room is saying here is that everything Oriole is doing, the things he says and the art he makes, they only have meaning if they're rooted in his pain. That's a very dark way to look at this sort of expression, but it's a common way people have looked at the tortured artist archetype over the years.
God, that I've you know, of course, I don't know how many times I've heard that, you know, the tortured artist, the only way you're, or you know, or like other or just, you know, the myriad of other flavors of, oh, your art's only good if you like it comes from an area of pain or something like that, and like that is so limiting. Like, it's for me at least, like for me at least, it's very much like of a similar like vein of saying as that whole thing is like, oh, think outside the box and stuff like that. Like, oh, where like in reality, true creativity can only be like the most of the time, like true creativity has always come from having to work within limits instead of just ignoring them outright. So like the idea that you can only make good art, whether it's entertaining or like actual like physically good, like an actual painting or stuff like that, and have it only be good because you're suffering, like that is just so self-defeating. It's sad. And not even like in like an angry or like an actually sad way. It's more just pathetic.
Returning to the fight, Dogtooth and Complex fight Room, though the Complex loses its head during the battle. The Room is driven to the brink of death before the Angel once again appears, questioning why Room continues to live in despair, only for the Room to say that he doesn't deserve anything better.
"I am owed nothing."
When the Angel asks what has become of his songs and his joy, Room says that they're forfeit. He has no interest in uplifting art, and instead he wants to forever be negative. But that is the wrong answer. The Angel says that there is nothing left for them to say, and Dogtooth finally defeats the Room by stabbing him in the back. He then...
Just the idea of wanting to be miserable. Oh, God. I mean, like, I know people with clinical depression. I'm not going to specify who, just for, you know, personal, you know, for personal privacy reasons, but, like, I know him, and he doesn't like being, you know, depressed. It's, like, he wants to be happy. He's just, you know, the depression and, you know, the stresses of life kind of build up after a while. The idea of saying, oh, I want to be miserable is, like... It's so self-defeating, and again, like what I said before, so pathetic. Because at that point, like, it is so easy to be sad. It's so easy to be negative. At that point, you're just basically saying, I'm too lazy to try to, you know, get better. I'm too lazy to be happy. And that's like, that is honestly, that is so sad.
Approaches the Room and holds up his hand, forming the American Sign Language symbol for I love you. Messages in French then flash on the screen reading, "There is only one happiness in life. It is to love and be loved. Don't hide anymore. Stick the knife in your throat. This is how we go." And that right there is the message of boisvert distilled down into one sentence. It's to love yourself and allow yourself to be loved no matter how dark things appear to have gotten. But of course, that's not the end to this story.
Yeah.
Honestly, those videos felt more like a wrap up to the first arc we covered in our last theory, or some sort of transitional narrative between stories. Something further driven home by a QR code at the end of a love letter that leads to another secret secret video with a lot of hidden meaning. Much of this is very self-reflective from the creator. Like, for example, the title of the video is actually the end of an Imager link, taking us to this image. Half of it is the script from the very first boisvert video, but the other is a letter from the creator to himself, reflecting on the series and his own struggles with mental health. But now, he's looking forward, and tons of other secrets in this video point towards that. Like, first off, a strange paper-headed design is shown to come over the silhouette of a man. That will become very important, trust me.
Well, okay,
on the
then.
side, a message flashes reading, "And what if your love? And what of your fear? And what of your trust?" While also referencing the Bible verses 1 Peter 4:12 through 14, Isaiah 41:23, and James 4:13 through 14. I'm not going to read them all out, but I'll put the verses up on screen.
And also, I just noticed at the bottom of the page, it also said, "I have made a covenant." Covenant with who?
And regardless, they all speak about tests, ordeals, and questioning where life goes when it's very fragile. And finally, a note at the bottom reads, "I have made a covenant, and now I could fall." Clearly, wherever this story is going, it's leaning way harder into religious overtones. So let's jump into the new part of the narrative, shall we? The next chapter is what we're going to call the Covenant arc, since it introduces a brand new character named Covenant. This is the guy with the strange origami head we mentioned a second ago. In Christian tradition, a covenant is the word often used to describe a promise between God and man. Think like the Ark of the Covenant. So here in boisvert, at least at face value, covenant seems to represent a commitment to a greater power, a promise for the main character to get better, to strive to be the best he can be. And to facilitate this, Covenant now oversees this world as like a sort of computer system, acting as a firewall to purify the self and secure the system against breaches, or lapses into negativity. We see this most clearly in the video www.blind, where all of the visuals and dialogue seem to be inspired by computer hardware and software.
We restarted every system. We rechecked every gateway, every access point.
Plus, this video and its description are
Binary.
just covered in secret messages written in binary and hex code, which is a very computery sort of code to hide messages in. Now, you might hear that this covenant system is acting as a firewall and think that he's shielding Oriel's psyche, but that couldn't be further from the truth. One of the first things that the covenant notes here is that Oriel has always known the burning sensation of pain and struggle, and that the covenant doesn't think that's a bad thing. That's reflected in those hex code and binary messages, but also here in the dialogue.
Perhaps it is hard to believe, but all you have ever been is burning. It is nothing short of beautiful.
It's also not a coincidence that this is said against the
Okay, what are those Imager links and what do they show?
imagery of a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. The point being made here is that pain doesn't have to be destructive. It can also be transformative. The Covenant is trying to get our main character to accept pain and give it meaning, rather than just swirling down the drain of negative thought. But that doesn't exactly vibe with Dogtooth, who is determined to conquer and defeat that pain. We see this in the video Angel's Fall, with the dog lashing out, even at the angel, questioning how it could permit this pain. Cue another great cinematic fight and another musical banger, but that's cut short when the Covenant shows up. It whisks Dogtooth away to some strange room. It almost feels like a pocket dimension, where it uses American Sign Language to say, "You more than story." It then warns Dogtooth to be careful before leaving him here in this strange void.
You more than story. What? Is that breaking the fourth wall or something? What does that mean?
To me, this seems like Covenant sees his duties as compartmentalization. He's taking all of the different parts of Oriel's psyche, Dogtooth included, and putting them in their own boxes to avoid as much internal conflict as possible. He's locked Room out of the system by putting him in, well, a room, and Dogtooth here is in the metaphysical doghouse. And this is allowing Covenant to rigorously maintain the system that is Oriel and the harmony that provides. But what did Covenant mean there when he said that Dogtooth was more than than just a story. Well, that's basically the new theme of this arc, and it's all about exploring the difference between your true self and the story that you tell yourself about who you are. This is actually really driven home in a secret hidden in this video. At one point, the angel opens up its mouth, revealing a QR code leading us to an unlisted video that's just 20 minutes of blackness. But about 14 minutes in, a link appears in the bottom right corner, directing us to this image, which reads in part, "You are more narrative than man. God is proud and I am sick." And back in the WW.
God is proud and I am sick. Okay, that's some really flowery language there. Obviously, there's some sort of like meaning. I just don't know what that would mean. I just don't know what it means.
WW.blind video, Covenant reinforces that a person can be more than they think they are.
There's so much more to your fundamental construction than what will be given credit for.
There's even a song that plays in reverse in Angel's Fall that says,
"It's a hard, tough pill to swallow, but in time you will see that there's so much more of me."
For some, however, that narrative becomes a prison, a box, or room that contains them, with that constructed version of yourself ultimately taking on a life of its own, separate from the real you. We see this happen literally in the video Painless, where an artificial person is assembled on screen, and then comes to life before being set loose on a constructed paradise.
Wait, is this going to be some narrative about, about Dog and all that? How they're like only parts of the real guy or something?
Attacking various animals and disrupting the balance of this place. Even the conversation happening over all of this video is about someone trying to convince you to buy into a false reality because it's one that lacks pain. You don't have to hurt here, but the listener refuses because that lack of pain and hardship is a part of life that he refuses to deny. This gets a little confusing, but this constructed self comes across something that has to represent the true self, a suffering self, entangled in barbed wire that we've seen represent pain in this series. But thankfully, there is hope here. The constructed self draws a key out of its hand and sticks it into the suffering self. Now, this might sound like a bit of a stretch, but this key, it's a reference to the pain of crucifixion. I mean, just think about it. This video literally opens with a nail being driven through a hand and a key being drawn from the hand. And rapidly scrolling text at the bottom of the video reads, "If I am here to tell you a narrative, consider this an explanation of my shorthand. The event of crucifixion is pain wholly and inextricably. Pain, not ritual. Follow where it will guide you, where story fails."
Okay, so now we're getting a lot of Christian imagery here with the crucifixion. But again, is it like crucifixion? I mean, granted, I guess you could say that the pain of crucifixion can be constructive because that ended up making Christianity and all that. But again, like if we're continuing on with the whole thing that pain can be used for good. But at the same time, crucifixion was an execution, meaning you were supposed to die from it. I mean, you couldn't do anything with that pain other than just end.
This message is saying that the hurt we feel and the crosses we bear can lead us down better paths. It might even carry us further than the narratives we create about who we are and about who we want to be. Why? Because those narratives keep us in a box. This is further reinforced by the phrase "les indolents sont les perdus," which means the painless are lost. Now, I don't think that this series is telling people that they should seek out pain, that they should embrace masochism or anything like that.
Just don't show this video to Markiplier. He just would not believe you.
That does look like it hurt.
People might mistake me for some kind of a masochist.
Oh, that ramps up in pain quick.
No, it's telling us that pain isn't so black and white, even if the series is literally black and white. You know what I mean. No, there are shades of gray too. The pain we encounter in our lives can lead us to change that we need, helping us carve a path forward into something bigger and better. And sometimes it's those that do not allow themselves to feel or process that pain that remain lost, stuck in their despair. That is why boisvert is saying pain is the key. The hardships we endure let us transform, like that butterfly coming out of its cocoon. And this is shown when that constructed self puts the key into the real self. It allows the suffering to take on a new form. The true self ascends and becomes an enlightened being, achieving something greater by letting itself process the pain and hardship it's gone through. And yet, this constructed self still cannot help but attack this new enlightened being at the very end of the video. It's hard letting go of the stories we tell ourselves and move beyond them. And this actually takes us directly into the next video, titled Zero. Here we return to Room, who has been trapped inside of, well, this room for ages since Covenant locked him up. But he's able to escape and eventually tracks down and kills a being known only as the Saint. Yeah, this is a pretty much a new character, and if I had to guess, it represents a religious force within Oriel's life, and it's deeply connected to the Covenant. However, Room immediately regrets killing the Saint, and a QR code appears on screen with a note reading just, "Please." This takes us to the unlisted video, -0, which sees the Room undo what he's done. He revives the Saint and then leaves, going to sit and have a phone call with, well, someone. Interestingly,
Jeez, what is it with everybody in this world where they're all just suddenly shirtless? I don't remember there being so much shirtless action in the previous video.
Room's triangle head has turned into a square here, similar to the one we saw on the Saint. Now, to be honest with you, the phone call Room has here is intense. Like, it's clearly very representative of very real sorts of conversations people going through mental health crises often have. But I'm happy to say that it's someone reaching out for help, trying to explain the mental turmoil that they're going through and communicate that even though it will take work, they will be okay. And it's here where I want to jump ahead a couple of videos to what I consider the conclusion of the Covenant arc. This video has a strangely long name for the series. I have done everything for his sake. He is crying and the door is open. And
wow,
in
okay,
it,
that is very wordy.
Oriel look outside at the strange, terribly confusing and intimidating outside world, and he leaves. He leaves the comfort and security of his home and ventures outside. And you know what? It's terrifying, it's disorienting, and not necessarily a pleasant experience. But he does it. And isn't it just full circle that boisvert as a series started as a representation of the depression felt from the COVID lockdowns, and now its main character has been able to overcome his fears and return to the outside world. It's just beautiful when you think about it. Eventually, Oriel collapses before the image of a deer and says, "We could leave." And that's correct, he can leave. Even with all of his pain and his baggage and the narrative about himself that he's tricked himself into believing, he can leave. I don't think it's a coincidence that he's saying this to a deer, a creature that would have antlers, just like Oriel, and is the truest reflection of what an antlered animal would look like. This is his truest self, finally set free, even if it took so much work and pain and trust to get there. So there are all of the main videos in boisvert's Covenant arc, but what does it all mean exactly? I mean, there's just so much packed into the series. Even with this 4.5-page breakdown, I feel like I had to leave out a ton of cool details.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at this, and even that video is 2 years old. Like, is the channel is still going on, still making new videos? Are they on just a completely new arc now? And I mean, the message is good. It's just, I mean, granted, you know, for a simpleton like me, like, the message can be a little lost in, you know, just the visual language of the whole thing.
And smaller puzzles and so much. For example, the video Tell Them is basically a super sick music video that shows the Covenant system straining to maintain order as old enemies and darker thoughts like the Complex try to sneak back in. There's also a recurring character called the Knight, which has a knight chess piece as its head that comes in a couple of times. I'm not entirely sure what's up with this guy, to be honest. Like, he might represent some of the darker parts of religious faith that can damage your optimism, but honestly, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this one down down in the comments. It's an especially cryptic part of an already incredibly confusing series. But all of that said, what is the message of this part of the series, of this arc? What is it trying to tell us? Well, the creator of Boisvert clearly has a deep understanding of the struggles many of us face with mental health. He's been able to take the metaphorical demons that so many deal with in depression and anxiety and externalize them. And this arc is telling us that the pain that you deal with, if you struggle with those issues, that pain is not for nothing. Like, I cannot stress enough that if you are battling depression, anxiety, or any other mental health issue, I'm so sorry that you have been burdened with that, and I know all of us wish that you weren't. But you can channel that pain into something else, something positive. You can use that pain to empathize with others, to improve both their suffering and your own. In the series, that's represented by the Covenant, the promise for improvement, and in the end, it even gets the room to reverse course and embrace trying to be a better person, a better human.
Which is really odd, given that the whole thing with the room was that they were just basically depression made manifest. Which, again, like, that's a bit of a confusing part for me. I thought all these bits were like components of the one guy. Are they actually like different people?
Boisvert uses very religious ideas and imagery to get that
definitely.
idea across, but it doesn't have to be that. It can take any form you wish, as long as it's true to yourself. So just like the first arc of Boisvert was encouraging you to reach out if you're struggling, this one is asking you to do the next step, to communicate your feelings so you can build a better tomorrow for yourself and for others, one small step at a time. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory.
Oh, God. You know, it's rare when you have one of these. I mean, again, at this point, I don't think really analog horror. What do you call analog horror? I mean, the visuals are kind of scary, but like, it's rare when you have one of these series that has like a happy and uplifting ending, like, at all. Like, usually, like, they can be so depressing sometimes. Oh, God, honestly, yeah. That's definitely all I got to say for now. So, yeah. I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.